In this grade 12 geography video, we are preparing for the 2025 October-November finals. We are looking at the first exam scope for your paper 1. So we are going to go through all the topics that are going to show up in your paper 1 and what to study under each and every single one of those topics. So grab a pen and a reliable space where you will be taking down what it is that you need to study, so that as you're studying you are able to cross out what you have studied so that you can clearly see what you still have to cover. Your paper 1 is going to be a 3-hour paper that you're going to write for a full mark allocation of 150 marks. So you have to make sure that as you're answering it, there will be 3 questions that you would have answered. Each question will be out of a total of 50 marks, so that when it is all said and done, you have answered 150 marks worth of a question. So your question paper is going to consist of 2 sections, namely section A and section B. The section A is the one that we are going to start with, which is on the climate, weather, and geomorphology. And then section B, we will get into it later in the next section. In section A of climate, weather, and geomorphology, you're going to have 2 questions that are both compulsory. So this is where the 100 marks of your question is going to come by, from the 2 questions that are going to be in your section A. You are not choosing. Both of them are compulsory, meaning that you have to write both of them. Now, what are they going to be based on, these questions? Meaning, what is the scope for those questions? First, we are going to look at the mid-latitude cyclones, which covers the frontal depression, the extratropical cyclones, under which we will have to cover the general characteristics. You have to cover the areas of formation. You also have to cover things like the conditions that are necessary for formations, among other things. But these are the ones that I would start with, including the stages of development. I think, in my opinion, these are the basics, meaning that if you don't have these covered, then you are not ready for that topic. The same applies to our tropical cyclones. With them, I would also make sure that I cover the general characteristics, the areas of formations, as well as the conditions necessary for formation, including the stages of development. Then, to conclude our topic of climate and weather, you're going to look into the valley climates as well as, or rather versus, the urban climate, and you're also going to look at everything that is encompassed in those 2 topics. Then we are going to get an integration where we are now looking at climate and weather, but in an interpretation of synoptic weather maps. From there, that's where we get now into geomorphology, where we're going to start with the drainage basins in South Africa. That starts with all the definitions, meaning to identify concepts. You're going to look at the types of drainage basins. You're going to look at the factors influencing them. Then we have the fluvial processes. This is where now we look at everything that has to do with the rivers. So that is the river profiles, the river identification, the river grading, the river rejuvenation, and everything that you know about the rivers that does go into the fluvial process. And then the last thing we are going to look at is the catchment and the river management, which will cover the following: first, the definition of river management, then the causes, then the importance of managing drainage basins and catchment areas, the impact of people on drainage basins, catchment areas, river pollution, over-organization, deforestation, human settlements, strategies to manage drainage basins rather, and case study of one catchment management strategy in South Africa. As you are taking down your scope, make sure that you include all of these things that fall within these topics. Section B of your question paper is going to be geographical skills and techniques. In other words, it just simply means it's going to be the map work, meaning the map work techniques as well as the skills that are required to read and interpret your maps. So let's start with map work techniques. So what is going to be required from you is for you to be able to showcase the following techniques and be able to interpret and identify the following: that is the contour lines, the contour interval, height and conventional signs, the compass directions, true bearing, magnetic declination and magnetic bearing, map scale, types of map scales, comparing scales of topographic maps and orthophoto maps, aerial photographs, calculating straight line distances in reality, calculating area of a regular feature, map reference numbers, alphanumeric references, map coordinates, which is the fixing positions and stating the coordinates as well, be able to calculate and interpret the average gradient, the cross sections and the drawing rather of cross sections, and being able to indicate positions of features on cross sections, and then also being able to do the intervisibility and calculating the vertical exaggeration. Next, we have the topographic maps, which requires you to be able to use the 1:50,000 scale to identify and interpret physical features and also be able to apply the content of the climate and weather as well as geomorphology on the map work. And then you also have to be able to interpret temperature, rainfall, climate zones, biomes, graphs, and tables that are related to the 1:50,000 scale. You also have to be able to identify different types of rivers drainage patterns, determining streams order and drainage density on that 1:50,000 scale. And then you also have to be able to identify once again and interpret the structural landforms and slope elements on the 1:50,000 scale. From there, we have the aerial photograph and the orthophoto map, which usually go together. But with the orthophoto map, we are going to look at the scale of 1:10,000, unlike the topographic where we were using 1:50,000. But under these, you also have to make sure that you cover the following: that is the oblique and vertical aerial photographs, the use of size, shape, tone, texture, and shadow patterns to identify features, landforms, and activities on the photograph, and the orthophoto map, the orientation of orthophoto map, and also be able to compare the orthophoto map to the topographic map. Like I was saying before, the orthophoto rather is the 1:10,000, and the topographic is where you will be using and working with the scale of 1:50,000. Lastly, we have the GIS, under which you have to cover the GIS definition, the components of the GIS, the sources of information, the concepts and identification and application of remote sensing, resolution, pixels, spatial resolution, and vector and raster data, among other things. YouTube recommend you more of my videos, be sure to click the like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below.